I think it is a stinging indictment of his absolute inability to look beyond the past of the show in order to draw in a new audience. You did not need to bring back the Celestial Toymaker and do a bi-generation. You did not need to make the sequel to Pyramids of Mars, a story that most of the audience outside of the UK legally won't even be able to watch, and make that the focal point for your season 1 finale. You did not need to make the season 2 finale reliant on the Rani and Omega. You did not need to end 3 of the past 4 episodes with a montage of previous Doctors. If the BBC decides to renew, it needs to come with the stipulation that you cannot use anything from the classic series, sans Daleks, Cybermen and TARDIS. Cut off that supply, because you cannot keep going to the show's past. You've got to stop. You have to stop, because you are just alienating everyone. It's a show that ends up not being for a new audience. It's a show that, with Ncuti Gatwa's casting, was meant to be looking forward to the future. It's meant to be looking forward to a new creative horizon, but instead he just keeps on being brought back to the past, and now we have Omega in the season 2 finale, which is literally a massive rotting skeleton that's too big and encumbered to even leave the tomb that it came from. And these were unforced errors. Nobody forced Russell to do this. I'm not trying to be mean here, but genuinely, these creative decisions have basically brought us back to square one again, and I don't get why they've done it. Ncuti Gatwa is out, everyone, after less than 2 years as the incumbent Doctor since appearing in The Giggle in late 2023. He has regenerated, and has seemingly regenerated into Billie Piper. Now, despite all available evidence to the contrary, this behind-the-scenes video from the Doctor Who YouTube channel opens with Ncuti Gatwa saying that this was always going to be the plan. Let's listen.
It was always the plan to do this amount of seasons.
Cut to Simon Pegg from The Long Game going, liar. Liar! Obviously, I'm not expecting Ncuti in these interviews, in these press statements, to say sack Russell T Davies, sack... No, I'm not expecting that. I'm not expecting that at all. However, I don't think that this was the plan. Now, this is different too when Jodie Whittaker and Chris Chibnall announced their departure. I had been hearing since the very beginning of the initial announcement with that pairing of showrunner and Doctor that 3 seasons was their plan. Now, Ncuti Gatwa was on the Graham Norton show in October 2024, saying that he was expected to start filming a new season of Doctor Who next year. And as working in the TV and film industry, I can confirm in November and December that I knew wardrobe people, I knew prop people, I knew people within the TV industry in the north and near Wales, that they were applying for jobs and also sending in their applications and sending in their dates and penciling in dates to film the next series of Doctor Who. That was the plan from late 2024. However, fast forward to February 2025. This is from the Instagram account of Keddy Scott Associates, who's a casting director. The new season of Doctor Who premieres on BBC One this weekend. Archie Lal as Hari Chandra. This is Belinda's dad, who never appears on screen. We also had these reshoots happening, which we can tell now in hindsight were taking place at Belinda's house. This is in February 2025. 5 days of reshoots took place. We also know from the behind the scenes videos that Ncuti Gatwa's final day on set, the 5th day of the reshoots, was for that big unit scene when Ruby is trying to get everybody to remember who Poppy is. This was Ncuti Gatwa's final day on set. Also, one of the most interesting pieces of evidence that this was not what was meant to happen for the ending of the reality war is this promo image, which was released presumably accidentally, by Disney Plus Germany. This shot depicts the Doctor and Belinda dancing at what appears to be like a Happy May Day party, and the rumour is that the Vlinks was meant to be DJing at the party, and the final shot of the series would be a big like crane pull out from the party to reveal Carol Ann Ford as Susan watching over the party, and then that's the end of the series. That would basically be like a cliffhanger ending where the Susan thread from Wish World and the Interstellar Song Contest was going to continue later on. However, the fact that this did not turn up in the finished episode itself indicates that the ending itself was drastically changed. Also, this clip has been going around and circulating. This was Ncuti Gatwa over 3 years ago when he was first announced as the Doctor, and he was doing the BAFTA red carpet interviews with Russell T Davies, and he's asked by the BBC entertainment correspondent Lizo Mazimba how long he thinks he'll be the Doctor for, or what he's most looking forward to.
23. And what are you finally most excited about shooting with all this?
To battle aliens for like a really long time.
This feels like it's going to be edited into documentaries 20 years later, akin to Colin Baker's interviews in the mid-1980s when he's asked how long will you be the Doctor for, and he says as long as they want me. What on earth has happened here? Obviously we don't want him to stay if he does not want to. We do not want him to be a captive Doctor. I've said before, particularly when it comes to the behind-the-scenes drama and the behind-the-scenes abuse in the 1980s from John Nathan Turner, that I would rather that those series were not made than the people involved were unhappy. And the same obviously applies to mid-2020s for Ncuti Gatwa. If he's not happy or if he wants to leave, he obviously should be allowed to leave. I'm glad that he was able to at least leave rather than be pushed if that's the case. When it comes to Ncuti Gatwa as well, I know that the big rumour that was circulating in January, February, which would have taken place before the reshoots, the big rumour was that Ncuti Gatwa was offered a perfume commercial or like a beauty product commercial that would have paid more for a couple of days' work than his entire annual salary being the Doctor, but he had to turn it down because he was committed to Doctor Who and he had to keep dates open and dates available. I presume that that might have been the straw that broke the camel's back for Ncuti, and he was like, okay, I can't keep turning down these opportunities, waiting for a Disney renewal, waiting for a BBC renewal. I'm going. That is my guess. And obviously, as an up-and-coming actor, as a rising star, as somebody who was ascending into the mainstream when he was cast, you know, I'm glad that he was at least able to do the time that he's done. What kind of worries me now, though, is that almost a year ago, Russell T Davies was interviewed by the Radio Times saying, I'm working on the 4th script now for season 3. It's not actually commissioned, that's up in the air, but that's the same for every TV programme. If Russell T Davies has indeed written a big chunk of season 3 and maybe even season 4, which would have been 8 to 9 months before Ncuti Gatwa films his regeneration scenes, I'm very worried that whoever ends up playing the Doctor next after Billie Piper, I don't know, or maybe even Billie Piper herself, I'm really worried that they're just going to be given the exact same characterization as the 15th Doctor, because these were scripts that were originally made for Ncuti Gatwa. I hope they're massively retooled. We shall have to see. What I will say is that it has been over 48 hours since Ncuti Gatwa regenerated seemingly into Billie Piper, and it's genuinely quite concerning that there has been no official press statement, there has been no official clarification as to the future of the show, and there hasn't even been an official released promo image of Billie Piper on the TARDIS set, with the exception of this still frame from the episode which has been officially released. The fact that Ncuti Gatwa filmed his regeneration back in February and there's nothing in Doctor Who Unleashed regarding Billie Piper or anything like that indicates that this was a down-to-the-wire, very last-minute decision to have Billie Piper. Even the regeneration itself, it's just Billie Piper's head superimposed onto Ncuti Gatwa's body. It is quite a shoddy effect. When it comes to Billie Piper allegedly being the next Doctor, or being the face of the show, what actor now, in their right mind, after Billie Piper's done as the Doctor, or whatever happens in regards to the character, under this current Bad Wolf Russell T Davies regime, would want to play the role of the Doctor, knowing that under this current regime, they can just be thrown under the bus for content or for more nostalgia? What actor will want to play the role of a companion alongside Billie Piper, knowing that they will just be inevitably compared to the companion who ensured the show's success in 2005? Who would want to take this poisoned chalice now? David Tennant's 14th Doctor for the 60th anniversary specials, you can write that off as an anniversary thing. You can write that off as a one-time thing, as a placeholder Doctor for some anniversary specials while the show recalibrates itself after leaving with Chris Chibnall and Jodie Whittaker and then going into this new regime under Bad Wolf and Disney Plus, and also buying time for Ncuti Gatwa to finish filming Sex Education. That makes sense as a thing on its own. But then, having less than 2 years with Ncuti Gatwa as the next Doctor, and then going straight into Billie Piper, effectively bookending Ncuti Gatwa's tenure with nostalgic callbacks to, no joke, 20 years ago, it just comes across as incredibly cynical, reeking of desperation, and also the idea that Russell T Davies and Bad Wolf and the Disney Plus investment was meant to restabilize Doctor Who after what had happened after COVID, what had happened with Flux, what had happened with the centenary BBC specials in 2022 when they thought that the show might have been taken off the air, where they were just going to fade to black with Jodie Whittaker's regeneration and they didn't really know what would happen next. Russell T Davies steps in, Rachel Talalay directs a regeneration sequence with David Tennant. The fact that we are only a few years out from that and we are in this situation again, massive unforced error from Russell T Davies. I think it is a stinging indictment of his absolute inability to look beyond the past of the show in order to draw in a new audience. You did not need to bring back the Celestial Toymaker and do a bi-generation for Ncuti Gatwa, effectively robbing him of his introductory moments and introductory scenes that almost every Doctor before him got. You did not need to make the sequel to Pyramids of Mars a story that most of the audience outside of the UK legally won't even be able to watch and make that the focal point for your season 1 finale. You did not need to make the season 2 finale reliant on the Rani and Omega. You did not need to end 3 of the past 4 episodes with a montage of previous Doctors. If the BBC decides to renew Doctor Who again, it needs to come with the stipulation that you cannot use anything from the classic series, sans Daleks, Cybermen and TARDIS. Cut it off. Cut off that supply, because you cannot keep going to the show's past. You've got to stop. You have to stop, because you are just alienating everyone. Stop it. Genuinely. It's a show that ends up not being for a new audience. It's a show that, with Ncuti Gatwa's casting, was meant to be looking forward to the future. It's meant to be looking forward to a new creative horizon, but instead he just keeps on being brought back to the past, and now we have Omega in the season 2 finale, which is literally a massive rotting skeleton that's too big and encumbered to even leave the door, even leave the tomb that it came from. And these were unforced errors. Nobody forced Russell to do this. I'm not trying to be mean here, but genuinely, these creative decisions have basically brought us back to square one again, and I don't get why they've done it. Russell T Davies himself must have known that this was the wrong approach to do, because in press interviews, in public, he would state literally the opposite. He knows that doing his current approach was an optics nightmare, so he just opted to lie in press interviews that he wasn't doing it.
Exactly. It keeps moving on. It literally, here it is 61 years old. And the marvellous thing is the past 61 years don't matter. It's here, it's now, it's new, it's fresh, it's for you.
So he knew that this was wrong. Come on. I don't want this live stream to be a let's kick Russell T Davies. I mentioned in the car when I did that reaction to the reality war that he is the man who got me to work in TV. He's the man who made me want to work into the creative fields. But if this is his idea of trying to keep the show alive, I'd honestly rather that we have a longer wilderness years. If I'm given the option, the 2 timelines between Billie Piper's The Next Doctor, or we have a wilderness years for 4 or 5 years, I'm choosing the latter. Anyone who thinks that bringing back Billie Piper, after 2 years previously bringing back David Tennant as the Doctor, that's not a regime that's looking forward. That's not a regime that thinks that Doctor Who's best days are in front of it. That's a regime that thinks that Doctor Who's best days are behind it, and it just becomes a self-referential show that cannot move forward. I'm glad that the BBC have faith in the show to keep promoting it, to keep making it, to think that it's worthy of a big budget and Disney investment and things like that, and, you know, that it's able to do a cinema release as well for these 2 finales, that it's able to push it so much in licensing. It shows that the BBC, even though they don't know what to do with the show, they at least know that it deserves respect and it deserves something. But I'm with JXE on Twitter. BBC, listen, when Doctor Who isn't getting the viewers you'd hoped for, reduce its budget, let it be niche, and force your writers to just do self-contained sci-fi adventures with no returning characters, settings, or monsters from previous runs. Keep hiring fresh writing talent. This is how you keep a long-running franchise like this healthy long-term. Don't try to force it back into the cultural zeitgeist. Just keep hiring new people, and if the show picks up popularity again, then you can let them try and have a go with the show's legacy. Yes, sometimes there are some instances where the show can look very good on screen with the increased budget, and it can do things that the show couldn't have done before, like looks. I think that having the Mr. Ring-a-Ding villain is something that could not have been done with the BBC resources, that could only be done with the Disney Plus investment. All of that being said, I still preferred the story in the engine. I still preferred the well. I still prefer the smaller scale stories. Let's not forget that the best regeneration story, fan consensus, is The Caves of Androzani. Half of that is shot in a bloody quarry. The other best regeneration story is The Parting of the Ways, that Russell T Davies wrote as well, and it's just the last stand before the Dalek invasion, and that's the story. That's the finale. You don't need a finale for Wishworld and the Reality War that involves Irani, that involves Omega. You don't need that. It's a massive unforced error. There has been a lot said of Christopher Eccleston recently. You know, sack Russell T Davies, sack Julie Gardner, sack Jane Tranter or whatever. But he has been incredibly positive over the past few years in regards to Billie Piper. Christopher Eccleston genuinely worships the ground that Billie Piper walks on. At a convention years ago, Christopher Eccleston said this regarding who could play the next Doctor.
And if Billie Piper ever wants to play the Doctor, I'll assist her.
You know, that was,
Who wouldn't?
you know, that was going to be my question for her, if she ever saw herself being a doctor.
I think that's what they should have done. Rose should have... I was saying it backstage. Rose should have moved up and become the Doctor.
Oh, yeah.
It was just too early in terms of... It's incredible, really, if you think about it. In 2004, they picked yet another white, skinny male to be the Doctor. If somebody had have said in 2004 it should be a woman, there'd have been outrage. And yet only, 14 years later, it's acceptable. But it's ridiculous that we weren't thinking of a female Doctor at that time.
Yeah.
But I do think it's time for, genuinely, joking aside, it's clearly, certainly in my country, I think we're all tired of how difficult it is to be a white male. And we don't know how difficult it is to be a white male anymore.
Base Christopher Eccleston. Like, I want you folks to understand, I have no issue with Billie Piper personally, and this is not a slight on her as a performer. She is one of the most talented women in the UK, like, broadly speaking. Not just as an actor, but she's also a writer, she's also a director, and she's been cast in some massively high-profile projects recently, including the upcoming Series 2 of Wednesday. She was the headline character of Scoop. She's brilliant. If she hadn't have been Rose 20 years ago, she would be like a top 5 contender to be the next Doctor. But that's not the world we live in, unfortunately. She was able to have that incredible career, in part because she cut her teeth on TV dramas playing Rose 20 years ago, and we shouldn't be looking back to that, unfortunately. If you want to bring her back as a supporting role or something, you know, not necessarily a companion or whatever, but like a Kate Stewart equivalent, not necessarily the head of unit, but also like appears every so often, fine, whatever, that could be pretty cool. But in terms of fronting the show, being the headline-grabbing, attention-getting moment after Ncuti Gatwa's regeneration, not only, I think, does Ncuti Gatwa a massive disservice, but it reeks of desperation for Doctor Who more broadly. I'm not the first one to have said this, but there's been full-blown academic studies and essays about it. But having a concept like regeneration in a family show like Doctor Who, it's a brilliant way to explain concepts like death to children. Like, genuinely, like, even though people leave your life, even though people move on or people pass away, it does not negate the good times, and the universe will always move forward, and you always have so much more to look forward to. But having David Tennant coming back, having Billie Piper coming back, it's emblematic of the broader media industry, the broader media landscape, in this era of late-stage capitalism's utter inability to get over the past. And I think that having Billie Piper come back is kind of the big embodiment of that. People have been trying to say, explain this in Star Wars terms, explain this in Spider-Man terms or whatever, but I do think this sort of defies description. This defies comparison. This is very low. It is a massive shame that this is all that Bad Wolf and Russell T Davies by proxy thinks that Doctor Who can be now, in a way to generate content. Have you seen that RTD petition? No, I've not. No, I have seen very outlandish, very disproportionate reactions, big personal attacks on Russell T Davies. I don't want to participate in any of that. Like I said, this is the guy who made me want to work in TV in the creative fields in the first place. I met him a few months ago and he was lovely and he shook my hand. We talked about Countdown. It was very fun. It was very nice. But we can't keep doing this, lads. We can't keep doing this. We had David Tennant as the incumbent Doctor 2 years ago, and now the incumbent Doctor, or at least the incumbent face of the programme, is Billie Piper. where are we going to get the next Ncuti Gatwa from? Because this just sends the absolute worst signals to any prospective actors. That, oh, we want to get a fresh, new, great talent to play the Doctor. Oh, okay, by the way, when you regenerate, you might turn into Martha Jones. When you regenerate, you might turn into Karen Gillan. You might turn into Matt Smith. It reeks of creative stagnation. So I am here to kind of join the chorus of people saying, Russell, thank you. Thank you for bringing the show back in 2005. Thank you for being there to shepherd it after the centenary specials to the 60th anniversary and beyond. But either step aside or be a script editor or just a producer and let somebody else's creative vision drive the show forward. And if I was the BBC, God forbid, I would say give the show an equivalent budget to what it had in 2007 and also use it as a big writer's room. Bring in fresh-faced new writers. Bring in writers who want to tell whatever story they want and go for it. And make sure that the finale does not bring back any classic villains. Genuinely. I wasn't joking earlier. I think the idea of the BBC saying, yeah, we'll continue Doctor Who, but you cannot touch anything from the classic series. You cannot use archive footage. You cannot do these flashbacks. Continue it moving forward like that. That's honestly the best case scenario. I'm sick of glub shittos, man. I'm sick of glub shittos. I'm sorry. The mystery with Billy Piper is interestingly set up. What do you miss that isn't? No, I disagree that Russell said it himself. It's there to generate content. I'm not interested. It's so cynical. The fact that the mystery of Ruby Sunday and her mother and everything from season 1 turned out to just be built on top of a massive amount of lies. The fact that so many of the mystery elements and the big elements of season 2 were edited in February to accommodate for reshoots and be re-edited and stuff. No, I don't care about the mysteries under Russell. They always end up to be massive lies or big red herrings or just not that interesting, or they just turn out to be something from the classic series. I don't care who the boss is. I don't give a shit, because it's just going to be something from the classic series. Mrs. Flood, oh, she's the Rani. The one who waits, oh, Sutek. The one underneath, oh, it's Omega. There's no imagination here. It's just shit from the classic series, recontextualized and misunderstood. There's no imagination. What happened to the man who brought us the Judoon, who brought us the Sycorax, who brought us the Rachnos? Most of the villains from this season have been politicians or teenage boys. That's like a valid creative interpretation, but then when the finale comes for Wishworld, and you need to start actually delivering on these themes of radicalization and podcast grifters and conservative fiction and fantasy worlds, it just gets bogged down by Rani and Omega and glub shittos. I don't care. I'm sorry, I don't care. And there's this interview as well, which made it into Doctor Who Unleashed, and I promise I'm not trying to do super personal attacks here, but I want to get the read on this. So the context here is that Jodie Whittaker's name on the call sheet for her day in February for filming for the reshoots, because Jodie Whittaker's inclusion was a reshoot inclusion in February, her code name was Petrol, because, we don't want this leaking out. If the call sheet leaks, we don't want people knowing who Petrol is. Fine, okay, cool. I've seen that before. I've seen some really weird as shit code names in my time working in TV. And Stefan Powell is doing interviews with the cast and crew saying, what would your code name be? And there's some really good ones, some really fun ones. Ruby Sundays is Pinstripe. And then Russell's asked about the Petrol code name. And this interview happens and is somehow wound up in Doctor Who Unleashed.
When we had our special guest in here the other day, and on the call sheet, she was down as Petrol.
She was called Petrol.
Why?
I'll tell you why. Because one day I think there'll be a companion called Petrol. It's been a name that's been in my head for a long while.
Is it?
Yeah, and I might use it one day, I might not. I might go have someone called Felicity from 1602 or something, but equally Petrol. It's a good name.
Oh, you like it? Okay, there we are.
Yeah, it works, doesn't it? Everyone kind of picked up on that.
Yeah, well, we did. We've been asking everyone what their code name would be as a result.
Exactly. No one's like going, what's the code name? Something about the word Petrol that goes ping like that.
Yeah.
So one day, maybe you might see a Petrol in Doctor Who.
What was that? And people in the chat have, I don't want to get too personal here, but when I first saw that, my inclination was, this sounds like Trump in a one-on-one interview. Complete rambling incoherence. And I've seen people say that online as well and be like, oh, why are you comparing him to a fascist who wants queer people dead? How dare you, on Pride Month? No, Hitler drank water. Come on, folks. But it's the fact that this wound up in Doctor Who Unleashed as well. Come on, man. Guys, this would happen in RTD1, let's be real. Well, to be fair, in RTD1, he was going to use the N-word in The Unicorn and the Wasp. So, actually, yeah, maybe he has always been like this. It's in The Writer's Tale with Benjamin Cook. He was talking about notes and redrafts for Unicorn and the Wasp, and there is a Agatha Christie book title with the M word in it. And he and Benjamin Cook were joking back and forth in emails about including it in the episode and making a joke about it. Thankfully, cooler heads prevailed, but I do genuinely think if that same conversation happened in 2025, there'd be no one to stop him. There'd be no one to tell him that's actually a bad idea. He's done 2 seasons and overseen an upcoming spin-off. We'll have to see what the spin-off is like, of course, written by Pete Matthaig, overseen by Russell T Davies as well. But I do think that, I've been saying this, say it with me, chat, we need fresh blood. We need new writers. We need new producers. We need new heads at the top. Earlier on in the stream, we learnt that Andy Pryor, the casting director for Doctor Who for over 21 years, has basically said goodbye. And obviously that's a massive blow. That's a massive hit. But also, it's probably for the best. It is probably for the best that we do get a new guard. I just wish that we had like official confirmation that we would be getting a new guard. Fresh blood. Petrol T Davies. And we thought Mr. T was being mean to Moffat back in the day. This is on this. I'm sorry if this comes across as mean, but like Doctor Who is one of the biggest shows this country has to offer. It is a massive export for BBC Studios, for the Welsh economy broadly. It employs, no joke, hundreds of people. The jobs of hundreds of people rely on Doctor Who. So when you have Russell T Davies introducing glub shittos into the script that no one's going to care about, overstuffs the finale, effectively burns money on action set pieces that no one's going to care about, and because of his inability to reach new audiences because he's so committed to digging up the past, ends up wasting Ncuti Gatwa, causing him to have to turn down jobs and miss out on opportunities because he's waiting for a recommission, because season 1 was so actively hostile to bringing in new audiences that it needed to have because of these deliberate creative decisions. I think that's a fair thing to say. I think it's fair to sort of like hold him and the producers responsible because of these, and I have to stress, these are unforced errors. No one forced him to bring back Sutekh. No one forced him to do a bi-generation. If there's evidence to the contrary saying that the BBC mandated a bi-generation, I'm happy to hear it and view it, and I will change my opinion accordingly. But like I said, even from the bi-generation concept, that he was like, oh, we've never done this before, it's never been done before. Maybe there's a reason for that, Russell. I talked about this with The Giggle, and I remember when my review of The Giggle dropped in late 2023, I had so many people angry at me saying that Ncuti deserved better, because I thought that Ncuti Gatwa, who's meant to be the new face of the series, who's meant to usher in a new generation of viewers internationally on Disney+, how dare you say Ncuti deserves better? This is a brilliant idea. And now we get to the reality war, and the idea of what bi-generation even is not consistent with The Giggle, even though Russell wrote it? Come on, buddy. Something's gone wrong here. And I think it's creative decisions. If it turns out 20 years later when we get all of the behind-the-scenes information and it turns out I am wrong, then I'm willing to own up to that. The past 4 finales we've had have centered around Unit Tower. Power of the Doctor has its own Unit Tower. We've got to get out of the past of the show. The show is locking itself in Unit Tower, surrounding itself with the past, and it's completely unable to escape it. We've got to stop.